Hello everyone, it's Gigabeef here, and today we're looking at the SVT and why I don't think it's necessarily overpowered, but could do with a few tweaks. So the reason this gun has caused such a stir in the community is because, at least at face value, the SVT seems unbalanced. The two most obvious metrics to judge the weapon by are firstly the ammo that it uses, and secondly its fire mode, and by combining 7.62x54R and semi-automatic together rings alarm bells straight away for most people. On its own, this is not necessarily a big issue. For example, how many stock SVDs do you see early wipe? There are usually better alternatives, but when we compare the SVT to a few other similar guns, this is where it starts to look a little bit busted. Keeping in mind that the SVT has 96 recoil as its starting point, the weapon is in many ways similar to the Vepr Hunter, another cheap early game gun with low mag capacity, but the Hunter is rarely used these days. There are a few reasons for this, but the fact that it has 311 recoil in its standard configuration is certainly one of them. The SVD, which is a more modern weapon and was produced after the SVT, begins with 153 recoil, and full meta editions that are somewhat ergo balanced only come to 81, with 69 being the absolute bare minimum. These cost a fortune to make, but are still within the realm of the SVT's handling, which is a bit bizarre. The RFB starts life at 136 recoil, and this can just squeak down to 93 if you put on all of the best in slot recoil attachments. On this basis, the SVT is incredible value and requires no modding to match or improve on the performance of more advanced weapons that need even more money spent on them to get to a similar level of recoil. However, the recoil number isn't everything in Tarkov, and the handling of each weapon differs, so it's better to see this in practice. So we've just jumped into an offline raid here, and we have got the SVT, which as we said has 96 recoil. We have a stock SVD with 153, and we have an RFB also at stock with 136, just so we could do some comparisons between these different guns. So the SVT-40, if we fire this, we're going to fire at the bottom line here, and we're going to see how high it jumps. So basically it gets to about the middle of the wall here. We swap over to the SVD. This guy jumps all the way up to here, like nearly to the top. And then the RFB, it's probably going to be no surprise. So yeah, actually it was only to about the middle here. Now the RFB is a little bit different because we're using an optic on this. The SVD we're using irons. I have brought a Cobra with me so that we can attach the same optic as on the RFB, so we can have a look. I mean, it's a lot closer to your face on the SVD. Yeah, it jumps to about here, and on the RFB it ends up looking like that. Now the RFB is weird because you can see that the optic is mounted so much further down the gun. That's why the reticle is quite small. It's almost like mounting it on the handguard on an AK, for example. So it means that the actual reticle itself jumps inside the frame quite badly for the RFB, which is a little bit of a problem. And if you try to fire this thing on a more rapid fire basis, you can end up with the reticle just leaving the optic entirely, which is pretty awful, and the whole gun sort of moves up. What happens in Tarkov, the recoil is strange. Like the front of the gun moves up first, and then the back moves up, and then it kind of goes in this weird wave. You'll see if I fire a couple of shots off. So the reticle ends up settling down below the frame here, which is really strange and makes it awkward to fire for more than a few shots if you're using anything, like this particular optic. You can get away with this if you're using one of the more meta scopes, something like even the TAC-30 will do, to be honest, because it's got a nice big reticle on it. But anything small like this, and just the little optic, the crosshair just jumps so much. The SVD is similar but acts kind of differently when you've got an optic on. It does jump inside, but it's not as bad. The whole gun does lift up, so it does disappear out at the bottom of the frame. And you do get something similar with iron sights as well, which we'll have a look at now. So we'll just reload this guy, and if you fire once, it looks fine. But if you fire again and again and again and again, and you see the iron sight disappears because the back of the stock kind of comes up. Now, this is something we've been talking about for a long time in the community, about how it should be improved and how BSG needs to fix it. We're going to have a look at the SVT. I feel like the SVT basically works the way that it should. If we fire this a couple of times, we go bam, 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 bam. It comes back to where you'd expect it to, and you can see the irons really quite easily over the top of the gun, which is really, really nice. And this is one thing that, although the recoil number itself looks pretty decent, the reason why the SVT's got really good handling for a semi-auto weapon and with this particular caliber, because even if the recoil is increased, the handling on it is pretty decent. Now, I don't mind the guns actually feeling good to use. I'm really not that bothered about that. But this is one reason that explains why it feels so much better than its competitors. If this thing jumped all the way up to here, which I think would probably be more fair, it would still feel okay. It would just have much further travel time and resets. You wouldn't just be able to pinpoint people so easily using this gun with irons, which I think is why people find it so powerful to use compared to the other alternatives such as the SVD and the RFB. And you very rarely see the RFB a little bit sometimes, but the SVD you very rarely see it in this form because it's just awkward to use, and the iron sights and even optics, the gun gun starts to float up, which this doesn't happen with the SVT. So hopefully they take this Recoil model and use this with the Recoil rework that they're going to do to make everything feel good and not just this gun. So the recoil on the SVT is certainly very good for the caliber and interacts well with the weapon's handling to allow the user to pile shots down faster than other comparable guns. There are a few other pros as well, such as the fact that it only costs 55k, which has already been increased by 10,000 rubles by the way, and is accessible from Prepor 2, technically from level 15. Also, you can top load a single magazine from an ammo stack, which can bring costs down even more if you're running super budget. And while we're looking at magazines, the AVT's 15 rounder compatible at Prepor 3 is pretty much the same price as the SVT standard mag for when you get there. All of this certainly makes the weapon look extremely powerful, and don't get me wrong, it is. But using this gun is not without its downsides, one of which is the low ergonomics. ADS speed on the SVT is not particularly fast, and while it's very similar to the SVD, compared to something like the RFB that has much better ergo, it's extremely sluggish. This means that you have to deliberately set up fights with it, utilizing angles and ambushes more so than with other weapons that you can bring up and fire almost straight away in response to an unexpected enemy. Another massive downside to the SVT is the situation with optics. Before using it myself, I was really concerned about this gun, but once I realized that you can only use it with the Mosin PU 3.5 times scope, this really helped me to feel better about where it will sit in the overall balance. The PU is usable, but it's certainly not a good optic. Combined with the low ergo of the weapon, the eye relief is pretty bad and loses sight picture at the sides even when you lean one way or the other, and somewhat when you strafe as well. The one saving grace is that you don't lose sight picture when you shoot, so if you know where your target is 100%, then it can lay down shots really fast. But for the more general engagements, target acquisition, and pretty much everything outside of the most obvious fights, which you'd probably be winning anyway with any gun if you have that kind of information, sometimes the SVT can feel lackluster. In close quarters, the PU can be taken off in raid, which certainly helps with near targets, but iron sights are pretty bad in Tarkov overall because of misalignments similar to scopes whilst moving, which makes it really hard to use them to shoot accurately. I do like the irons on the SVT when they are still though. Also, unlike the SVD or the Hunter, there is no way to mount a laser on the gun at all. The Cobra mounts can be used to cheaply get a laser rail onto the others, minus the RFB obviously, which is only possible using the rangefinder, and this lack of tactical devices can put you at a big disadvantage in CQB for point shooting. It's hard enough fighting against full auto weapons when in the wrong position, and there's no saving grace here either. Finally, we have the ammunition. 7.62x54R is extremely powerful, and there is no doubt about that. Once you reach Prepor 2, buying LPS and T46 to your heart's content means that Class 4 is no longer an issue ever again. But once players start accessing Class 5 armor, the SVT won't be two-shotting people in the thorax anymore with these bullets. To deal with this, one of the harder hitting cartridges will need to be used. PS is accessible at Prepor 3, but only two-shots the Corund consistently, as all the rest of the armors have too much durability. BT and BS are on Prepor 4 after quests, and SNB is a craft-only ammo, requiring you to give up some workbench time in order to make it. Against higher level players, this isn't going to be the same as the Vepa Hunter in its heyday. People used to pick up that gun for pennies on the flea and fill it with M61 at level 15 from the flea market to take down chads. As good as the SVT is, there is still some work or progression required to two-shot those with higher tier armor on. Even the argument of finding high-end 54R in raid, which is definitely possible and doable, still requires you to go to those spots such as Attachment Shack on Woods and find it first before using it. Once we get onto the higher tier traders, money has never really been primarily the problem for most people, and you'll likely simply be better off utilizing weapons like the SR25 and the RSAS with crafted M61 instead, which is just as good as the ammo in 7.62x54R and have better handling than the SVT, along with being completely modular to allow you to use any optic that you like. At Peacekeeper 4, which really isn't that much further than Prepor 4, you can just use M80 along with the low recoil that comes from these guns. Are we going to see people using the SVT? Of course. Will you die to it sometimes? Yes, most certainly. But is it the best gun in the game, and will everyone be using it after the hype has died down? I actually don't think so. For some of the reasons that we talked about before, you have to be quite skilled with the SVT to make it work properly, so I think a lot of people will give it a try and then go back to what they're used to afterwards. I honestly don't mind there being a weapon in the game that has Chad killer potential at a budget price, but I do think that A, the recoil should be increased a little to make it more in line with some of the more modern counterparts, let's say 110 as a first take, and B, that you should only be able to get one per reset. By all means keep it cheap, but I don't think it should be accessible in unlimited quantities. One per person per Prepor reset is fine and would stop players from spamming the weapon simply due to its value. One thing that we haven't mentioned that is worth noting just before we finish is the AVT. This is accessible on Prepor 3 for a barter, but it can't take a scope. I didn't realise that it can't even take the PU at all. The mount disappears when you have the AVT, so although this gun is powerful, I still don't think people are going to use this after the beginning of the wipe. So next up, if you're anything like me and prefer low recoil full auto weapons, go into check out this early M4 build that I put together that requires nothing more than level 2 traders. It's surprisingly good. Otherwise, a big shout out to all my patrons, and as always, have fun in your raids.